Hey, what's going on, everybody? Joe Menza here. And in this video, we're going to do a winter scene, and we're going to use some white gouache. I'm using M Gram titanium white. I'm wetting my paper down. It's 11 by 14 Fabriano Studio 90 pound. And I'm using the same basic colors. We're using burnt umber, light red, cadmium yellow hue, ultramarine blue, Payne's gray, and alizarin crimson is on my palette. I don't know if I use it here. So I'm starting off with a little yellow ochre that's also on my palette. You can use yellow ochre or you can use raw sienna, but I'm using yellow ochre here. And now I'm taking some ultramarine blue, and we're just going to create some background here. So if you're not a fan of using white in your painting, a lot of people like to leave white for their snow, which is fine. There's nothing wrong. I like to use white. I want to actually paint as opposed to leaving areas open. I mean, I could leave areas open. You really have to plan for that. If you're doing fast and loose, you don't want to use masking, then you can use the titanium white. I think it's perfectly fine. So I'm trying to create a nice little background here. Trying to create a little purple hue and using a little alizarin, little blue, and then I'm taking my brush and I'm just taking out some paint to create some clouds. Just a clean hake. When I do these videos, I have like 3 hakes. I have 2 large and I have 1 small or medium. And I have those ready so I don't have to keep really washing them out. Now, I'm taking the just a little paper towel, just dabbing and cleaning up some of that. Give the effect of clouds here. I'm not too concerned about that running on the bottom there, because as I go along here, I'm going to add more colors. We're going to be putting in a mountain here, using some ultramarine blue and some Payne's gray. Again, a lot of what I'm doing here is going to be covered with a lot of white. A lot of people say you shouldn't use white in paintings. The moment I realized I start using white, I feel like it opened a lot of avenues in painting. I mean, if you're trying to win some awards or something, and you want to paint in the very traditional watercolor style, and you want to learn from maybe you want to, reach that caliber, then this is probably not the best way for you. I'm just painting in a way that I enjoy. I'm not sure if they would refer to that with white gouache as mixed media. So right now I'm just going for some shapes here. Really, any painting that I do here is probably not considered technically. If you were to find the artists of the past that, I don't know, probably there's a lot wrong with what I'm doing from a technical perspective. But again, it's what I enjoy. If you're doing this for a hobby, I mean, I've sold a lot of paintings, so as long as other people are enjoying them and I enjoy them and I'm painting what gives me pleasure, then it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not looking for like first place in any awards or anything. So now I'm doing this background with the mountains here. I'm taking a plastic card and I'm just scraping off, creating some snow, some highlights. Sometimes it's a little hit or miss. It's fine. I mean, if you do things, you can always go back and cover things up. In this case here, it's probably just a little too much. Too much of the scraping. And the paint's really wet right now. So I'm coming back in with some darker colors. Again, the same colors that we used already, the Payne's Gray and Ultramarine Blue. And I kind of just keep going as long as it's wet until I kind of get it where I like where it's at, where I'm going with it. And you can come back. You can do this as many times as you need to till you get something that you're ultimately happy with. I'm giving it a little spray with the spray bottle. One, to keep it open. Two, it sort of diffuses the paint a little bit. I've become really fond of using the spray bottle. I like the way it diffuses, it breaks up the paint. Here I'm just dabbing in some darker colors, just trying to get the darker side, shadow side of the mountains. I'm more concerned about what's going on in the center because the sides are going to be likely covered with some trees. So I don't want that real heavy because, you know, when you try to paint over that with a tree or something, it just kind of gets all muddy together. This is going to be a little bit longer of a video here. I usually try to keep them around 15 minutes or so, but this is almost the equivalent of doing like two paintings because we're kind of doing sort of the underpainting, and then it's going to snow on our painting, so it's kind of like frosting a cake in a way. You can, you know, there's some cases where you can't really get away with white so much, stark white, on paintings too much because it really stands out. But I think in winter scenes, and even on like water, you can get away with it. I think like cascading, falling water, like a waterfall, or a winter scene. And you can mix white with a lot of the colors. The problem with that is that it kind of grays the colors. It when you mix white with it creates almost a pastel version. It doesn't really lighten the colors. I used to do a lot of like a scale model painting, and you used to be able to mix white with colors and it would lighten the shade of the color. But with watercolor paint, it kind of just grays it. It creates almost a pastel version of the color. I was very used to, when I used to do paintings, I was very used to, or scale models, I was so used to, okay, you would do, say, and the scale models I did were characters, so like characters from movies and things. So if you were doing like a face, it was three-dimensional, of course, so you would take and you would do a base coat of the paint, a neutral skin tone, and then you would wash it with a darker, you'd mix it with a little brown or a little darker color, and then you'd wash it and it would settle into the areas of the face, and then you would take a highlight, you would like add white to that or a lighter skin tone, and you would dry brush it and it would hit the bridge of the nose, under the eyes, and you'd have a very 3D realistic face. So when I came into doing painting two-dimensionally on a piece of paper or a canvas, it was hard because now you have to get that. You have to come up with the sort of three-dimensional effect on a 2D surface. Now I'm adding some of the purple color. I'm coming in heavy here because this is going to be sort of the undercolor when I hit it with the snow. So I want it to show through. And that's something I used to do. When you used to do scale model painting, you would hit something with a dark color. When you dry brushed it on top, the difference was dramatic. And when I came into doing this, it's like, oh, you can't really do that the same way, but you can if you do it in a subtle way. And if you are fine with using some of the gouache colors, there are ways, and I'm still experimenting with it. I mean, every painting is like an experiment, but I am really experimenting with whites and ways to change shades and I didn't like doing winter scenes, honestly. I did one. There's one in my videos here where I went to the local river, and I did one. By the way, here now I'm taking some water on my brush, and I'm just kind of breaking this up a little bit. I just want some different shades in there. But trying to keep the whites of the paper, it's works really well. I mean, you could take your finger or your brush and you can make little shadows, and it can be really distinctive if you want to plan it out that way. But ever since I decided, you know what, I'm going to start really using white. I feel like it freed me to kind of think of things in a lot of different ways. Obviously, people will say in a lot, like, why don't you use acrylic? I don't know. I just like the way watercolor behaves. I mean, it makes sense because you can buy acrylic paint really cheap compared to watercolor. But, I mean, yeah, I'll go through. I just did a quick dry there. You know, watercolor paint's expensive, and if you're using white for snow, I mean, you can go through a lot of paint. Now, I do know some artists out there, they will use acrylic white on top of their watercolor. The watercolor can be sort of an underpainting. I haven't tried that yet. I wonder how that would work, if it would be too kind of ghastly or not. But then, of course, you're totally mixed media, I think, at that point. But I think acrylic white is a lot cheaper. You can get far bigger tubes. I mean, if 3, 4, 5 of these winter scenes, you've gone through a tube of white gouache already. I'm putting some pines here, and I'm just kind of using the brush to back and forth motion. Kind of the Bob Ross philosophy, always give one a friend. I'm still finding my mojo doing pines. Now along the side here, I just want to have some big tree growth just to kind of keep things different on that side of the page. A little bit of ultramarine, some greens that are already on the brush. I haven't really cleaned my brush here. Now this here, I mean, this could be a scene already without even adding any snow to it. So that's a decision you can make when you're like doing your painting. You can say, yeah, I'm going to stop here. Let the painting take you. This is my philosophy is, if you see the painting is looking a certain way, just go in that direction. Let fate kind of happen. And I was actually deciding that as I'm painting this, it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't go for the winter scene here, but what's nice is I think anytime you're doing a scene, I think you'll see, and you're like not really happy with the way it's coming out, throw some white on it and turn it into a winter scene and see how it works out for you. I know I'm going to put snow on these trees, so I'm not really worried about the trees so much. I can kind of shape them with the white. Interestingly, if you're doing mountains and you scrape off some of the paint and you have white on the mountains and you use your white, it kind of throws off the fact that you actually used white paint in a way, because it's like that's scraped. You didn't use paint there at all. Giving it a little spray just to kind of break up the paint a little bit, keep it wet. That tree is sort of going off the page. And the reason I did this painting is because I had posted a winter scene and someone asked me about doing a video. So this is kind of the result of that. And by the time this one is uploaded, I'll do a couple more winter scenes. I've already done a couple other ones that I didn't do videos for, but as we're going into the winter months, I think now I'm having more fun with it. I'll probably do some more winter scenes. I see the fun in them now. Before I really didn't like them. I shied away. Not only that, I'm not really a huge fan of winter. I think it's like beautiful to look at winter itself, but I don't like to exist in winter. I'm ready for like some warm weather. I'm not really ready. It's October now, and it's already gotten to like 50 degrees, and I'm really not ready for it. See, now look at this scene now we have going. You could really leave this right here and say, you know what, this is done. And you have a fine painting here, in my opinion. It's not a bad scene. Just flicked a little with a toothbrush just to break up some of the colors. Some of my oddball tools now are plastic card, toothbrush, fan brush, spray bottle. I got two spray bottles now. One sprays larger blobs, one sprays smaller blobs, and paper towel. And I also have a synthetic gold brush that the bristles are very soft. And I'll use that sometimes to kind of lightly brush over a painting to sort of soften the whole thing. So here we have, look at this is a normal, maybe a fall scene or something like that. Do a quick dry. And we're about to start snowing. When it comes to the white, I'll use the fan brush. I'll use my finger. I'll put white up on my board here. You'll notice if you use white and you go back to your palette, that white will contaminate. It really will. It'll turn everything into like a gray mess. So a lot of times I'll put it on my board here. So this is the fan brush. This is a Bob Ross fan brush. I'll really get it into the bristles, and I'll try to mimic branches with snow on them. Still playing around with this technique. You can always come back in with darker colors and cover up any white that you did. So now it's time for some snow. I like this fan brush because the bristles are like really spread apart. And again, I'll keep doing it until I feel like I like the way it looks. See how we can take the fan brush and you can dry brush snow into the foreground over the top. And because of that darker underlaying paint, it stands out and creates almost like shadows automatically. So here I'm just going to start kind of hitting this big tree to the left. I know you got to be kind of careful because if you start using this white and you put it all over and then you're like, oh man, this just looks like a big white mess. Looks like a big whiteout. So you can opt to say, I'm just going to put a little bit on the trees. I'm going to put more in the ground. In this case here, I might have went a little overboard on the trees. So I'll have to come back and sort of touch that up a little bit. It really depends on how much snow that you want. If you want a big whiteout. Once you start going in with the white now, new word for the day is creamify. It's gonna creamify any other colors that you start to use now. If you come back with another color, it's gonna open the white and it's gonna create almost this creaminess in your new color. And in some ways, it could work to your advantage, and in some ways, it could be a problem because it'll create a bunch of grays. So like now I'm dry brushing over this water, and it's giving me a kind of a neat effect. It depends on how dry too your undercolors are too. But see here now, I'm going over the top, and I'm just kind of bristles going back and forth. I'm using a flat brush here, And you can see as I'm starting to put this in, I'm using the white, by the way, really almost out of the tube. Maybe a little moisture to keep it moving. Now, M. Graham titanium white is a little bit more fluid of a paint. If you're using like Winsor & Newton white gouache, it's very, very thick. So you might need to add a little moisture to it. But as soon as you start adding moisture to it, it starts to go to the gray side. And then you can't get that dry brushing effect that brings out the tooth of the paper. I'm doing this over the water. I'm retaining some of that purple effect. If you don't have enough, you can come back and get some purple, and you can really blend it in with that white. It's actually a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with the white. See, now I put a little blue on my board. Say I want to get a little blue in there. See, and then the creaminess of it works together very nicely. And I hit it with a little water if you don't want to get too much on your brush, and just kind of blend this back and forth. And you can introduce some colors into this. I want to stay more to the almost the purpley side, though. I don't mind the blue, but it's a little bit of an icy stream. Yeah, because you could spend between $8 and $10 on a tube of the gouache. So you're going to be using more here because of the heaviness of it. Notice I'm putting a little red in there, letting it work together with the blue. That's red. Is it Azo red? Gouache. That's another M. Graham. So if I feel like I want to use another gouache in there because I don't want it to be transparent, then I have like 5 colors. I have Azo yellow, I think it's Azo red. Get me wrong about that. But they came in a little 5-pack, so I got like 5 colors. It was like a blue, cobalt blue, a yellow, a red, and then the white. And you can see what I'm saying, almost these pastel colors. So you be careful going to that route. I mean, if you want a pastel look, then you're good to go. But when you start blending it right on the paper, it blends in very, very nicely. You can create some really neat effects. Now, while that's drying on the bottom, I'm going to come into the trees with some darker Payne's gray with some ultramarine blue. And now I can work the shadows back in to these trees and blot out a little bit of that snow. It's a little overwhelming, I think. See, now you can see right there where there's some snow, you can still make out the tree. And I'll come back in and I'll do it on this side. See, now all of a sudden putting that down in the bottom there really brings out the white, but cuts back on how much white is actually there. It's fun. I all the people that I've heard say, "Oh, it's not traditional to use white." I'm having more fun now than I've had. I have fun every time I paint, but I'm having a lot of fun. It's no colors that are outside of my realm. Is rules are meant to be broken. I'm trying to create some shades underneath where these trees are, just to kind of bring them off the ground a little bit, if that makes sense. It's kind of going the purple color route because it's a cooler color. It's colder. It's more of a winter color. So now I'm coming in with Payne's gray, and I'm while that's drying, I'm defining the shoreline. Okay, so the Payne's gray, you'll notice when you're doing winter scenes, the shoreline almost is like a black. Now you can do a really dark stream. Sometimes you'll notice when you look at a distance at a stream and it freezes over, it's almost black. But if you have a nice snow that kind of drifts over the top, then you've got like this sort of drift that happens. Again, I'm just sort of fixing these trees. One thing I was going to say is early on when I started painting, I found that if I took certain paintings and I know a lot of people say don't fix them, move on to the next one, but there's a lot to be learned from taking a painting you're really not happy with, hitting it with water, and going in and trying to like fix things. You'll learn almost how things can be changed and manipulated by trying to constantly fix your paintings, if that makes any sense. For me, that I feel like it was worthwhile. Like if I tried to lift something or move something or blot something. First time I painted, doing a quick dry here. First time I painted, I thought I can't. Once it's that's it. I painted it one time. You can't. Now, like I can hit it with water. I can sponge it. I can dab it. I can. There's so much you can manipulate here, that I really didn't feel I could initially in the beginning. I'm taking a flat brush here now, 1-inch flat, and I'm hitting this in a light way that I want. It's like a dry brush in a sense. I want the tooth of the paper to stand out, and I'm just kind of going across now. I'm blending this in. I want highlights of where the snow is hitting, the brightness of that, and I'm dabbing it tinier and tinier as I go back, so it looks like it kind of goes back in the distance and sort of maybe up that little hill there. Watch now as I hit it with right where the shore meets. Really now makes that edge stand out. So as we continue, we go brighter and heavier on this snow. And as it dries, it will dry duller, but the more of the white that you use, it will glint, sort of like it's glinting the sunlight. Okay, I'm coming back with a little more of that darker shade to redefine. See, now as we redefine the shoreline, look at how that stands out now. It's like boom. And if you overdo it, blend it in with a brush or your finger and hit it with a little more white. You can keep coming back on top of it. Come back, take a little more white. Just kind of dabbing in where maybe there'd be some little snow piles or whatever. I just keep going until it's pleasing to me to say, okay, that looks right. Doing a quick dry, a lot of times I'll dry it if I want it to. That's as far as I want to go. I don't want to disturb it too much anymore. Sometimes I'll dry it and I'll multitask and I'll do things while I'm hitting it with the hairdryer. You can see we have some nice colors in the ice there. And we're kind of sloping the sides there with some white. I'm getting some little contamination in my white, but that's okay. It creates a little sort of gray. Not white is even, snow is even all the way, and white's all the way across, unless you're looking at like a big blanketed field, and it's usually like one big white out. It's a little bit of trial and error because as you're going, you're wanting things to look correct. So apologies, this is a longer video, and if you like the long video, then hey, let's call it my 45-minute special. I think Bob Ross did one that was like an hour long. Usually he did like half hours. Mixing a little more darker green on my board. Right now there's something even toned about this whole thing from left to right. There's nothing that really like stands out. So I'm going to have to sort of vary that up a little bit. Also, I'm kind of dry brushing to look like there's branches sort of sticking out there. A tree looked a little too evenly vertical. It's not bad looking right now, but there's things to my eye that like need to be fixed. I don't know if that's something I can pass on what's going on in my mind, but maybe as you see what I do, you'll see, oh, I see what he was kind of thinking there. Now I see I'm adding the white to kind of, I want that tree to look like it's got branches coming out. And I think we're good with that. Taking my fan brush. Again, I'm just like looking at it by eye. What do we need here? And again, I just did a quick dry. I'm taking the fan brush now and I'm putting a little burnt umber and some other sort of dry grass colors on there. And when you start having those sticking up through the snow, it does the trick so nicely of looking realistic. It really does. As soon as I did that, it just had a really three-dimensional texture. Notice those trees to the right on the back. They look like they're off the ground now. They're kind of on a little bit of a ledge. Sometimes I'll jump around on the paper because I know some other areas are drying. After I do the little grasses and things, I'll come back with a little highlight. If you overdo something, you come back, you just go back and forth till you get it exactly how you want it. Okay, so from this point forward, it's really just a matter of details and balancing things out. Dabbing a little white here and there, dabbing a little shadowy color here and there. All really till I get a good balance. See, those trees are looking pretty good now. I don't want to over fuss it or anything, but I don't want it to look like it just looks like a bunch of blobs. You just want the snow to accent the tree, really. Depends on how heavy, I guess, your snow is. Things could be so covered. It's really your whatever you like. Maybe you're trying to make a Christmas card, holiday card, seasonal card, whatever. See, now as I come back and I touch this in, it's not so much with the white. A little more shadow underneath. At the very end is when I come in with like the darkest darks for little shadows and things. If I over darken something like just now, I'll flick it with my toothbrush and I'll let water run a little bit. Dab it with a little cloth. Can't really mess it up. You make something too heavy and you flick it with the toothbrush, it'll break that paint up so it won't look like a big just solid mass. And I'm just doing a little darker grass here as we get closer to the corner, just to push things back a little bit. And we're coming close to the end here. I hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, I thank you for watching, subscribing. Leave any comments below. If you like winter scenes and you want to see more, let me know that too. Just lightly touching just some accents of snow. Tend to kind of overdo this, but see, now the shades of the trees from left to right are just slightly different. And I'm just gonna pen in a couple of birds, and we'll zoom in for the close-up. A couple of flicking a little sticks in with my rigger brush. And I think we'll call this one done. So here is the finished painting. And we'll zoom in. There's the couple of birds I put in. Nice sky. And there's our mountains that are scraped and our trees that have the snow on them. And we got a lot of different shades going on. There's our grass there. Snow across the icy area. Grassy side there. And that's it. Well, I thank you all for watching. Everyone, make yourself a great day.